Hello, my friends. Yesterday's strikes on Crimea were so successful that in the evening more explosions started happening again. It's reported that in Feodosia, another fuel tank exploded at an oil depot, causing a serious fire. Following that, there were reports of another explosions in Yevpatoria, but no details have been provided yet. It's possible that fuel tanks are starting to explode one after another. Meanwhile, the Russians continue to strike Ukrainian territory, once again targeting Odessa. There were reports of ballistic missile attacks. At the border, shelling continues, but no large-scale assaults from the Russians. Russian military correspondents report some clashes, but there are no major changes. It seems they continue to claim that local skirmishes are taking place. Despite this, Ukrainian forces remain on Russian territory, which is clearly frustrating the Russians. In the Kharkiv direction, unfortunately, the Russians have regained the initiative and started advancing again. They managed to break through at the factory and even raised the Russian flag to showcase their success. The cost of these advances is, of course, horrific. The fighting here hasn't stopped, and they are also trying to push forward in the area around the village of Staritsa. In the Kupiansk direction, battles are ongoing near Sinkivka, and the Russians are attempting to break through to the last village on the way to Kupiansk, Kucherivka. The village is so close to Kupiansk that if they manage to gain a foothold there, they'll essentially be on the outskirts of Kupiansk. For now, fighting is concentrated in the forest area, and Ukrainian forces are doing everything possible to prevent further Russian advances. Further south, the assaults on Kruhlякivka continue, and the village of Boguslavka has been placed under mandatory evacuation. However, there have been no changes along the front line yet. In the Svatov area, fighting has resumed near Stelmachivka, and attempts to break through to Vishneva continue. However, Ukrainian forces are currently managing to repel all attacks here. Further south, the Russians are assaulting Druzhelyubivka and Grekivka. In the frontline village of Izumske, evacuation has also been announced. In the Crimean direction, the Russians are continuing their assaults on Nevske, then Novosadove and Torske, making advances also in the Serebryanka forest. However, they haven't achieved any significant success. Over the course of a day, they conducted 17 assaults, and the fighters show no signs of letting up. In the Siversk direction, the Russians continue their attacks near Bilohorivka, but overall activity has decreased. There is still no confirmation that Verkhnyokamensky is under their control. In the direction of Chasiv Yar, the Russians are continuing their assaults around Grigorivka and are attempting to break through the canal to the outskirts of the city. However, Ukrainian forces are still preventing them from establishing a foothold. The Russians are also trying to stretch their southern flank, pushing towards Stupachki and Bilahora. The situation is very difficult, but all attacks are currently being repelled. Meanwhile, yesterday, the Russians launched strikes on Slavyansk. On Slavyansk, resulting in casualties and injuries. They also targeted Kostiantynivka, Drushkivka, and Kramatorsk. Overall, they are attempting to strike at the rear areas. In the Toretsk direction, the Russians continue to advance in Toretsk itself, attempting to push further street by street. They are also breaking through to Sherbynivka and conducting shelling across the entire frontline area. However, the frontline remains unchanged for now. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians are actively advancing on the outskirts of Myrnograd and are assaulting the village of Promeny. The situation near Lysivka is also difficult. The Russians are trying to move west through the fields to encircle both Seledovo and later advance on Pokrovsk. The situation here is catastrophic. The lack of fortifications is allowing the Russians to advance quite quickly. However, as it appears, nothing is changing. To the south, after capturing Tsukurane, the Russians have begun pushing further towards Novoselidivka, assaulting Hernik, Желанне Druge, and also Alexandropol. Overall, they are continuing to attack from all sides to advance towards Kurakhivka and the Kurakhivka reservoir. In the Kurakhove direction, the situation has also seriously deteriorated as the Russians have managed to advance significantly through the fields and now only 2.5 kilometers separate them from the outskirts of Kurakhove. It can be said that battles for the city may begin soon. Currently, assaults are being reported in Hostre while fighting continues in the area of the village of Kostantinivka. In the Vuhledar direction, the Russians are also making significant advances to the north. They have captured Zolota Neva, and the video confirmations are emerging that the Russians are moving freely through the settlement. Meanwhile, fighting for Bohoyavlenka is ongoing, and they are pushing towards Shakhtarsk. The Russians are gradually advancing beyond Vuhledar, which is causing a serious deterioration in the situation. In the Zaporizhia direction, only shelling is currently taking place. All previous attacks by the Russians haven't brought any success, and the front line remains unchanged over the past day. Additionally, there have been no reports about destroyed warehouses in the occupied territory for quite some time. But a result has emerged from the last 2 weeks. It appears that strikes on Russian bases have resumed, with 15 warehouses destroyed in total over the past 2 weeks. In the Kherson direction, shelling of the right bank continues. Yesterday, it was reported that the Russians dropped 4 aerial bombs on the central district of Kherson. Attacks on the islands near Hola Pristan are also ongoing, but the front line remains unchanged. Meanwhile, Russian military correspondents have claimed that they are achieving success here. In the Kherson direction. Today, our forces from the 61st Separate Marine Brigade stormed the islands in the Dnipro Delta. There is partial success, but we're still waiting for some confirmation. Meanwhile, Zelensky stated that only long-range weapons can calm Russia.
Що потрібне відчутне посилення наших можливостей, наших позицій. І саме зараз, протягом осінніх місяців. Достатнє постачання для фронту, достатнє комплектування наших бригад технікою, достатня далекобійність для наших сил. Це те, що точно стане найкращим, заспокійливим для Росії і найбільш підштовхне всю ситуацію до миру.
However, we're still waiting as the Ramstein meeting is scheduled for the coming days, where positive decisions may be announced. At the same time, foreign publications continue to report that Ukraine's NATO membership could occur without the occupied territories. Ukraine is holding private negotiations about a peace agreement under which Russia maintains control of the occupied territories without recognizing its sovereignty, but allowing the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO, writes the Financial Times. It's doubtful that Putin has the incentive to agree to land for peace negotiations, while he believes in the possibility of military successes. The Kremlin may be pushed toward an agreement that would be acceptable to Kyiv and the West. The fact is that today the Russians are losing huge resources to achieve major goals just before negotiations. Their urgency is evident to the naked eye. Therefore, they may indeed agree to such terms because they also need the war to end as soon as possible. Discontent is seriously rising in their country, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to recruit contractors for the front. It's no coincidence that signing a contract now comes with an offer of 3 million rubles. But for now, these are all preliminary considerations. There is no concrete information yet. Officially, Zelensky stated that the victory plan will be discussed with partners, refined, and then published for everyone. So we wait.
Сьогодні погодив графік перемовин на тиждень. Це зустрічі перемовини з багатьма партнерами. Ми представимо всім, хто може посилити Україну, план нашої перемоги кожній країні, яка справді може допомогти наблизити мир. І, звичайно, зрозумівши всі позиції партнерів, всі реальні можливості для України, посиливши наш план, ми зробимо публічною нашу стратегію подальших дій. Важливо, що перспектива загалом має бути зрозумілою для кожного в нашій країні. Ми пропонуємо нашим партнерам визначитись, як вони бачать завершення цієї війни, місце України саме в глобальній архітектурі безпеки, а також зі спільними кроками, які можуть поставити цю війну на курс до завершення.
Meanwhile, the Chinese have decided to show their support for Russia's aggression by congratulating Putin on his birthday with a glowing display in the sky. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.